So welcome to another episode of Above Average Black Men. Yours truly, Chris Pender Sr.
Devin Pender here to remind you to like, follow, subscribe, share, comment, and here to inspire and uplift the community. That's the most important part. That is our goal for this whole thing.
And we're missing Chris Jr., who will be here shortly.
Yeah,
but we're going to get into this and start the conversation. So the question or the conversation is about community, the sense of community. Has it changed? And why has it changed? And where has it gone? And I think this ties into what we were talking about last week, about politics and stuff. So I don't know if you have some thoughts you want to share on the community thing, and then we'll jump right in.
So I would say, at least from my point of view, when I hear like a community, of course, I had the stories that, I hear from you and like mom, like when you guys were growing up, how like, there's a real sense of people looking out for each other, if, your parents were around, there was neighbors there or, people across the street, could have been like my grandpa could have had a best friend. He was always looking out. It seems like that sort of thing. Like even from my own experience, like Mr. Dana, if we were playing in a neighborhood, like once I heard the whistle, I knew the McCrules had to go in, but I knew we had to be a little like behind them, It's just like a real sense of looking out. He was always there to, if you couldn't take me to school, he was taking me to school, that kind of thing. So when I hear community, I just think of things like that, just being there for one another, looking out. Is something's going on, just being prepared and active in each other's lives where you can count on someone. So that's what I hear that's what I think when I hear community. But I see you got a definition there.
Yeah, so I think it's important that we got to share Webster's definition, man. You know how I am, man. So Webster defines community as a group of people with a common characteristic or interest living together within a larger society. For example, it could be a community of retired people, a Masonic community. It could be a church community. So community is defined as a lot of different things. So to bring it into terms that I think is applicable to what we're talking about, I think community is something that's taught. I think, and it's taught, and once it becomes a part of your DNA, it travels with you. So it could be work. Your work can be a community. It could be you're on a team. That team could be a community. I think we got so caught up in community being defined as buildings and not the people. A community can be a church. But I think if it's taught, you take it with you. I think because it's not being taught, and we're seeing generations being raised in the individualism, that is no longer community. It's always about me. And the reason why I say it ties into a lot of topics we talk about, because I think that's why a lot of relationships don't make it, because it's about me. It's about I. No sense of community, and somebody's probably saying, what does that have to do with a relationship? Because, you have to come together and families have to come together. And that forms a community, and it doesn't mean you agree on everything, but you need to be like-minded in some things. The common goal could be my daughter loves my son-in-law. My son-in-law loves my daughter. That could be a common goal, common characteristics. We all, we believe in God, doesn't mean we got to all go to church every Sunday or, but we have that common characteristic, and I think the sense of community has changed drastically in the cities, man. And I think it's reflecting our politics. Politics used to be designed to bring people together, with a common cause, and that's no longer the thing. You got Republicans versus Democrats versus Libertarians versus the I don't cares, and everybody looks out for themselves. So I think communities become distorted, and I think it's reflected in every area of life, man. I mean, if you look at marriages, you see the decline of people getting married. You see the divorce rate is going up. If you look at where our schools are, a lot of our kids are not being taught to take care of school. They're not being taught to look out for each other. They're taught to look out for number one. So they literally throw stuff. We all know what's happening in our environment. The gun violence and other stuff that's going on. So I think it's something that has to be taught. But it also takes courage to be a part of a community, because when you are a part of a community, it's no longer just about you.
So let me add, like, especially from you growing up, from the heart of North Philadelphia, what would that community look like growing up for you versus nowadays?
Like, well, it was different. It was different because, see, when I grew up, people laugh when I say this, but there was a certain level of respect in our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't all best friends, but you had a certain level of respect for people in the neighborhood. It was a community because I couldn't go around the corner and somebody didn't know my dad. And would not hesitate to correct me, then tell my dad. It was a sense of community because if I was somewhere in like at Tommy's house, or run around Fred's house or Kevin Puckett's house or Keith Stone's house, if something happened, I could run in that house and be safe. And I knew I was protected. Or down at Barker, I could enlist their names, and I have to worry about it. It was a sense of community because, we had friendships within the neighborhood. We could play sports and go at it like cats and dogs. But, when people came from outside the neighborhood, we banded together. So it was different. We looked out for each other's moms. I wasn't going to see somebody's mom struggling and just let it go. Somebody would see your mom walking down the street, they would carry the bags. It was a sense of community. It wasn't perfect, and I don't want to paint that picture, but we had a sense of community. I've been on teams that were a community, man, and we stuck together. We stuck together, man. We were on one accord, man. We didn't agree on everything, but we wanted to win.
Yeah.
And we looked out for each other.
So let me ask you this: do you think there's a sense of we can only speak about Philadelphia?
Yeah.
That's because we're at. Do you think there's still a sense of community there now?
Well, no, I'm not going to say it's
community
totally
feeling.
gone because I don't know, but I think you can speak larger than Philadelphia because you see the news.
True.
You see it when you meet people from different cities, their attitudes, the way it is. So I don't think it's just Philadelphia. I think it's magnified because it's Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But if Chris was here, he would love this. But I also think if you pay attention to social media, you would see that, people don't talk like a sense of community anymore. It's about me. People don't always look out for people. People get robbed in broad daylight and nobody sees anything. A truck back up and empty somebody's house out and nobody sees anything. Now everybody has Ring cameras, and so it's a little different. But I think those days of looking out for people, kids, are different too. And there's reasons behind that because you got to be careful because certain parents may react differently. But I just think the overall thing where communities built relationships with police officers. When in high school we had a police officer. Moose was the police officer in the school. So we had a relationship with him. Wasn't perfect, but he was. When I was in Strawberry Mansion, junior high at the time, there was a police officer assigned to the school. So, you built a relationship with him. You got to know him. He got to know you. Now it's more us versus them. So it's different. And I think it's different. And you see it being reflected in a generation of kids. You walk into a school, if you're in, I just started running after school program in Pennell. I'm not giving a shout out to Pennell because I do it to all the schools. It was Conwell when I was with All Stars. So you have schools who have that leadership and it's a community.
Yeah.
When I was in Wright, not Wright, excuse me, I was in Kelly with Principal Crystal Edwards. It was a community, but that came from leadership. It came from at Pennell, Lofton. It came from Green at Conwell. It came from Edwards at Kelly. And it was a sense of community. They did stuff. The teachers did stuff together. The teachers were investing in the kids. They looked out for each other. The school was almost like a safe haven, but regardless of what was in the community, outside in the outer community where they were from. So it was a community. It was a mutual respect. They weren't all singing Kumbaya. They didn't all get along with everything. But it was a community sense that they had similar characteristics. They had similar interests. And to me, the main thing was they had a general respect for each other. And I think that's one of the things you don't see. You see it in politics, how people been in politics for years with other people, man. And then, now all of a sudden they're enemies.
Well, let me ask you what factors kind of, help destroy, the community aspect. What factors went into it specifically? I know one thing, I really agree with the lack of leadership. I feel like was definitely a big factor.
Again, Chris is not here. He's coming in, so I'm gonna beat him to the punch. I think it's done on purpose. I do. I think it's done on purpose because the quickest way to destroy, monopolize anybody, control them is to divide them up. And for instance, we were talking about politics last week. You got a sense of the community. So if you got 12 square blocks, I'm just as example, and they all deciding who they're going to vote for. That's power. But if I take those 12 square blocks and put them against each other, they're never really going to have a voice that means anything. So I think that was allowed to happen. I think, and if you look at our schools, just look what's happening in our schools. Our schools are falling apart, man. Many of them don't have air conditioning. Many of them got shoddy internet. Teachers are underpaid. So it's hard to maintain that sense of community because it just carries over from a kid who comes from a home where poverty reigns. He's already lacking. In a community, he maybe can't go far because of the drugs was from the neighborhood. So he's already growing up disconnected. Then he goes into a school that's disconnected. So we can't control the neighborhood, but we can control the environments in the school.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, I do think it's a systematic way to control a group of people. It's like when I was in my last point, I was doing work in a prison. And I noticed one thing when I was in there and got to talking to some of the inmates in there. Let me rephrase. Yeah, I was doing work in a prison. I wasn't in prison. I always got to make that distinction. But we were talking, and I noticed that all the colors, man, were like dull. There were no bright colors. It was like all these, like, man, this.
Yeah, it kind of puts you in this state of like. You feel drained when you see kind of like
it's like a gray state.
This is in the Browns and everything, and this is what somebody told me, and I never forgot it. He said, "What you need to understand is colors stimulate you to think."
They do, yeah.
Dull colors, like Chris said, is designed to subdue you, calm, relax. So I think if you flip that over, that's what they're done to people in these communities. They kind of they trick them, man. They dull them. They kind of help them go to sleep to the point where now it's about me.
Yeah. And like, I'm not sure if, I kind of missed this conversation. A point in terms of like the sense of community, of course, there's a Black community, right? Of course, that's where we focus at, probably where we should start our focus at. But I don't think it's a sense of community like in the United States as a whole.
Yeah, and that's why I purposely didn't say Black community, because I do, and even when I did the title, I purposely didn't say inner cities, although that's my passion, because I think it's done, across the country. Yeah. I think it's a United States thing where you can take somebody who is dirt poor, and they're fighting for something in the neighborhood. It's not really going to make you want them any better off.
I think part of it is like there's way too many things out there that kind of divide people and they take a hard stance on, and they just kind of put the idea of community to the side. Like, for instance, like we could say, this is probably an extreme, but like in the South, like, it used to be this thing of taking pride of being from there with people, but then it's like, don't find out somebody's a Democrat, somebody's a Republican. And it's like, I can't stand you. You can be my neighbor. Yeah. But it's like, but I think it's always it's something now where people just take this hard stance. And it's like, they decide whether or not I can't deal with this person.
But I think the root of it is most people don't understand what the definition of community is. I do restore the circle. So one of the things I say is, do you feel a part of the community? I've been in with some teachers who like the kids will be trying to figure out, and I say, you mind sharing with them? They don't know. So if you don't know what something is, how do you become a part of it? How do you duplicate it? How do you, help it grow and foster? They don't know. And then the other part of it is I think it's on purpose that it's not being taught, that they're not teaching these kids that when I grew up, and I'm going back, and people who went to Stokely School know exactly what I'm talking about. We were taught, it was kindergarten to sixth grade, little 15-room class school, but we were taught about community. We were taught about sticking together. We were taught about having school pride. It was embedded in our education. So if you weren't getting it at home, you were getting it in school. And it was being modeled. It wasn't just being taught. It was being modeled by the teachers. We had white teachers, Black teachers who really cared. So I think, you got to, it all goes together. But again, and I'll say it again, if we can get anybody or a group of people divided, they're not going to accomplish it.
I was actually just thinking about that. Yeah. Like this idea is divide and conquer, and we are being conquered.
But to your point, even in corporate America, you pit men against women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're so busy fighting, but the company making $1 million.
And that's kind of the whole idea of this point. It's like, it's something that divides us at every level. There's something. It's men versus women. It's white versus Black. It's the rich versus the poor. It's
foreigner versus
like you from the city, you from the suburbs.
When you had a sense of community, unions were born out of a sense of community. unions came because you got a group of people who were tired and frustrated and wanted better wages, and they came together and decided that, you know what, we may be different in a lot of things, but we all got to eat.
To the side, right?
Yeah. But that's how you get rid of that, because if you destroy a sense of community, Kentucky is one of the poorest places in this country, man, and yet they continue to vote red for people who's against every social program they have, because that's what they attach themselves to. They, to your point, they're not looking at the big picture saying my community is the whole United States of America. I was watching something today that was amazing. I never heard a term before. They were saying that we're approaching those healthcare deserts now. Like food deserts, where you have these communities where healthcare is just not available. And they say a lot of it's come from, the pro-life thing. So I know people won't get upset when I say it. I am pro-life, but they were saying like when that legislation passed to overturn Roe versus Wade, it cut out so many things underneath that impacts women. That women can no longer get those services, even though they're not directly tied to abortion. They can no longer have those services now. So you got people who may have to go somewhere, and hide and sneak gone, because you got some states who pay people to tell on it.
But I think again that goes to the point of where even when it comes to what people kind of back and vote for or follow, they do it based off of one point. Like, look at the bills or things that are passed. They don't look at the things that are underlying that get passed that also impact or affect you. Like they're able to say, all right, this is just about abortion, but it's really bigger than that.
But it's in the lack of communities in every aspect of life. I look at church. There should not be, in a biblical sense, a black church or a white church. There should not be, but it is. You can sit in the black church and hate white people. You can sit in the white church and be prejudiced, racist. It's not biblically based. So even church in its entirety is not a community. So this impacts every segment of life. So you can't sit back, and some people sit back and say, no, it does. And before you came in, we talked about
some people use the religion to kind of cement their racism,
to justify their.
But then that's not community.
That's what I'm saying.
That's not the purpose. And see, that's what I say. If I can divide you, I destroy the sense of community. If you can take the most talented football team, baseball team, basketball team, but if you pit them against each other, they ain't winning nothing. Because now it's not about I'm not gonna block for you so you can get a touchdown. Because we both on offense. Hey, I'm not gonna sacrifice and get a bunch so you can score to win the game. I gotta get a hit. So in that basketball,
there are some teams that's willing to put that to the side, though. And I think that's.
But that's what community. Yeah. But that's how we start out. That's what community is, willing to put those things aside because you have a common goal. You have common characteristics. It's not about being clones. It's not about being the exact same. It's a willingness to become a part of a community. It's like a work culture.
You almost said it. It's
like,
we do not. I do not approve of that. I do not subscribe.
But I was there too. Even in the woke culture, they can't all agree.
They can't.
But this is why is because if you can get people outside a sense of community, you can't accomplish a lot, because you got a bunch of people singing the same song, but they singing it in and around different. They all over the place singing it. And so therefore, if you got 10 people singing the same song, and around means they all start at a different time, you're not hearing one voice clearly.
Yeah.
You're trying to hear 10 people. So even though it's the same message, the method is so jacked up.
Because I even think about when we kind of talk about the idea of we want equality and a fair shake, and it's like we all want that. We all want that. But then I think people come, well, I want it because I'm black. I want it because I'm LGBTQ. I want it.
But see, we all don't want it. That's the problem. That's
I mean?
the problem. We don't really want equality. Mm-hmm. See, equality and inclusion is for everybody.
Right.
We want preference. That's what we want. We want preference. We want.
I think
we
that's
want
something that needs to be talked about, because I think that
Mm-hmm.
also kind of hinders the idea of us fostering a community, because it's really not about. People may run on the idea of it, but it's really about preference. It's more how is this going to be beneficial to me?
Well,
me.
Politicians have figured it out. They figure out, which demographic votes the most. Mm-hmm. What do I need to say to that demographic so I can win? Or they used to figure it out, and that's how they will win. Like Biden realized that, I'm getting all I can get out of black men. I'm getting all I can get out of Hispanics. So you know what I'm gonna do? I got to get the black females. I got to get African American females. So that's who he turned his attention to, and he was able to get those great numbers. It put him over the top. But it put him over the top. So even in politics, they understand that. If I can galvanize a community, I can make all kinds of changes. The problem is some people don't know how, or they allow their personal preferences to get in the way.
And it's like, I don't want to kind of make it a political discussion, but like, yeah.
But it ties into what we're talking about.
Placating, like just playing to, I guess, what they think are your core values and what you believe in. I think that's a big part of the problem a lot of times. It makes it hard to
definitely back and follow. But if you don't have a sense of community,
it's like, what are you really about?
It's like I say I live in a neighborhood and it says 10 houses on the block. All of us are starving. All of us are struggling. All of us. And somebody comes along and says, you know what? I want this property. I got to get this property, man. How can I get this property? Conquer and divide. I get one person to make him think either he's better or smarter or whatever than everybody else, and that starts it going. And so now, but sticking together, we can make our community work sticking together, because now we know you want to come in here. We can make demands. Or if I do sell, I can sell a top dollar. I'm getting this money.
I think that's kind of a good example too. It really is.
So let me ask you this question. So when you think of community and like the destruction of it, do you think the phrase, minding your own business, do you think that attributed to it?
Oh, definitely.
Mind your own business.
Because I feel like a lot of these,
definitely.
Like, now it's like I was saying to Dad earlier before you got here, like people really used to look out for each other, like Mr. Dana or Mr. Andre would look out for us because it's a sense of community. But nowadays, I feel like that whole mind your business aspect has kind of destroyed that, where now people don't even want to help out because you're afraid of the response you're going to get.
Stop snitching.
Yeah, we talk.
Stop. I mean, in a way,
it like kind of ties to that, because it's like this idea, like, mind your own business. Like, I ain't see nothing. Like, I'm not going to say nothing.
Well, but stop snitching also, it worked because it took away the sense of community, because now it was about you. You need to stay in your lane. You need to mind your business. This is not your business, when in reality it is your business. Mm-hmm. You tearing up the neighborhood I got to live in.
And it was like holding people accountable. Yep. It's like that whole idea of holding people accountable.
But if I can make it all about, if I can make people think it's all about them as individuals, I win. I went and Stop Snitching did. Why? It's snitching, you sold out. Why? Because you tell them, no, you not the fact that you tell them the criminal. Somebody breaking the law and killing somebody, or you snitching on your brother. No, you not. But I think that's the reality of it all. But how do you do it? Again, you take the sense of community out and said, what's good for the community to what's good for you.
And it's actually kind of even funny to think about the idea of Stop Snitching and how
it's crazy.
We kind of glorified, not telling on somebody that really did something crazy. Don't you deserve to be there? Right, destroying the community. And then you get respect for that.
But what's your definition of community though? This goes back to what we talked about earlier when we first started. Most people don't even know the definition of the word community. Mm. And it's probably the amount of people who know is probably decreased with every generation.
Yeah.
That is no longer about community, man. It's about me. How does this impact me? How can I benefit from this? I don't care if the other 9 houses don't make it out. I'm going to make it.
And again, kind of going with this idea of like, making sure that people kind of mind their own business thing. I think it kind of took away that ability for us to hold people accountable, because like you can't see something and say something. And then like now people, they kind of turning on you for that. Like before you would get support. Like if something was going wrong, like we could come together, me and you, Dad, be like, man, Devin, boom, we get hold him account. And there's nothing to it. But now, like if we didn't know each other, Devin could snap. Devin could be like, you don't know me. Like it was just like, don't say nothing to me. Like it used to be also, I feel like, a mutual level of respect.
But okay,
that's disappeared. It's a lot.
Let's look at
it's a lot. It's going on.
But it's happened throughout society because it used to be protected. If you saw something in corporate America told. So first of all, we turned around. So now they labeled a whistleblower, which in itself is not a great term. That you want to be known as a whistleblower when you do the right thing.
Right. Somebody that's willing to step up and tell the truth. Oh, you're a whistleblower. Really?
And then you're not even really protected.
You're not.
You're not anonymous. It's like, hey, Chris Bender blew a whistle. Yeah, he told on y'all. So
He lives right.
Yeah. So I think it's not just stop snitching in summer, but even the name is just different, but it's across the board. The cops. You hear cops say it's a code. We can't tell another cop, regardless if we did something wrong or not. We can't tell because that's a code. It's a stupid code.
And then even for that, I think,
but
bigger picture, there's these like sub communities within the larger community, and I think it's like which one is more important to you. People get to decide and choose, and I think at the end of the day, we're in this United States of America. That's like our one community that we all have in common.
But not anymore, though.
You would think.
Not anymore, because just look at January 6th. Look how many people agree with January 6th. It's not millions of people, but there's still people out there who believe in it. Who still think it's not about the United States. Even though we're the minority, it's about us.
Isn't that kind of frightening, though? Wasn't it a point in time where at least, like, we could be like I'm thinking about the dream team, USA winning. We could all come together for that. Now sports. We can't even do that now.
Well, no, sports. That's the one thing I gotta say. Sports.
I don't know.
Like when the Eagles, everybody, and I know everybody down there they ain't loving each other, but when the Eagles win, they do come together for a day or for that week, and then the next week they go right back to where they were before.
But even from a global standpoint, like the USA,
I agree.
Like they started hating on the USA men's team just because how can you call yourself world champs, regardless?
Because okay, but
why are you calling your fellow countrymen out in public like this?
Because again, what's your sense of community? If it's about you, then you do that. If it's about me and my personal feelings, and now I feel this way. I now have a platform to share this. I'm not thinking about the ramifications. I'm not thinking about the hurt or damage I do. Like, dude definitely is not thinking about his own endorsements. Because I'm pretty sure there's more. I'm pretty sure there's more basketball fans than track fans.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm pretty sure basketball fans spend a lot more money
than track fans
on paraphernalia. Basketball than track fans spend on the clothes they wear. But I have a platform now. I'm gonna say what I feel. Yeah. Forget about the damage it does. But that's what you do. If you can control if you can destroy a community, Chris, you take away the voice, you take away the power. Yeah. And now all I got to do is I got to find the pockets within the community who can just generate enough people to make it seem like it's the community. Mm-hmm. How many times they go to a neighborhood and they'll get the worst person in the neighborhood and that's that person represents the neighborhood.
That happens pretty often. I feel like.
Yeah, they always have a bonnet.
Yeah.
Always in a tank top. It's like
I've been to jail 5 times.
Yeah.
But I think but it has to be taught. It has to be taught and passed down to generation. I think you have to get back to that. Schools have to start developing community. Schools have to start talking about how schools are community. Schools have to start teaching these kids about having a sense of pride in the community.
I mean, that's a whole other issue and problem itself when you're talking about schools because they're not even on the same page.
But that's where it starts at because most of these kids are getting their education from outside the house.
Are fractured.
Well, I agree. But look at the district. Somebody watching this going to disagree. When I hear somebody say we should have year-round school, and I'm thinking to myself, we can't even keep kids in school in June and in August because it's too hot. And we think keeping them in year-round school is going to because that's my personal preference. I think, but if you look at it holistically, if you look at it from a holistic point of view, those kids who don't go to school, what's the difference? They don't go to school in the wintertime and summertime. So I think I hear what you're saying that some kids you may get, but it's still an issue. But if we can't keep school open all day long in August, at the end of August and at the beginning of June, how are you going to do it all summer? Now it goes and say, but in a real sense of community, we will be thinking of other ways to solve the problem. Pay our teachers more money, invest in our buildings. Fix the buildings, paint them, brighten them up.
After school programs and stuff in the community. Like I was thinking about the Police Athletic League, like POW. Like man, that used to be a thing. Like it made you kind of know the officers that were in your area, got to meet people, got to travel. Like I remember playing baseball, and that was just a good time. Like being able to. And
it's funny because you built a relationship, but then years later we hook up with her again.
Yeah,
through basketball.
Yeah.
And all three of y'all, but I think I don't know my opinion about what happened with Powell was again. I think the sense of community. I know because it's funny because when I was growing up, Powell was appealing to the community. Rec centers had Powell because I played Powell baseball, you had it, and then it just changed, man. One, it changed because people who didn't play baseball didn't support PAL. Forget the fact that the kids were benefited
what
from
about
it.
like the basketball and all, and other things that they could do that people actually had an interest in. Like I just feel like PAL fell apart completely.
Yeah, but
and it was like, man,
because lack of support
from who?
From the communities. If people would have gotten an uproar when PAL started to decline, something would have been done about it. But everybody was quiet. That you allow it to happen because you don't see the personal value in it. So you allow it to go do what
because it's just you just have it for so long and people just assume it's something that's going to be there, and then when they take it, it's like, I didn't know they were going to take
like the Boys and Girl Club.
But
stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah, but quiet as kept, they still there. I mean, they're not as glamorous as they were before, but they still there. But I think what happens is people. I think this is where the sense of community comes together. If there's a PAL, say we had a PAL, and we had 200 families that attended the PAL. And when the stuff in the PAL started declining, those 200 families, if half those families would say something, start to speak out, it would be a fight. But they're declining and closing and whatever's happening to them because nobody's fighting to keep them.
I'm even thinking beyond them. Like think about just like the YMCA, like how I kind of said that. You can clearly see the difference in the YMCA and other communities,
but they were supported. But they were supported by communities. The YMCA's in the city. The YMCA's in the suburbs, people go. They swim. They take their classes. They do all this stuff. Their families will go. Families will show up at the YMCA, and don't try to close it down. But in the inner city, ain't nobody marching because they're trying to close down the Y. Nobody's complaining because now the backboards are like peach baskets from back and so and so. Nobody's complaining because the pool's declining, in the pool. They don't, because why? Because the community doesn't get behind it. If everybody in the community got behind it and says, you know what? Perfect example. When they were closing pools a couple of years ago, a lot of black communities, African-American communities, they moaned and groaned, but it was no real uproar. But in some of them other communities, they got out there picketed, they did it, and a lot of them were able to save their pool. Same thing with libraries.
I think that some of it is, people don't know what to do. All they're going to do is complain. And they're waiting for somebody else to come in and guide them in. Right.
But I think we got to stop saying that.
It's true.
Come on.
Come on. In this day and age, if you can sit and complain in the barbershop.
Like, it's people who legit will complain about not knowing things or not saying, they have the information right there in their hand. We know that.
But I'm not saying it's in their hand.
Waiting. People are sheep. They waiting for somebody to come in and lead them in.
Like here's what
this is the plan.
But that's my point. In the strong sense of community is you're talking, you're getting together. Yeah, you may want somebody to lead. I get it. Everybody feels that they can't get out front, but you're doing something. You're not just. I think for most people, they just do nothing. I granted there's probably some people who don't know what to do, but there's a lot of people who just don't care because they feel like it doesn't directly impact me. So it doesn't directly impact me. I don't have kids who go swim down there, or I can put my kids in the car and take them to the beach. Because I have the wherewithal to take my kids outside the neighborhood to do certain things.
So I'm not. You can do that. Like
a lot of people, man. There's a lot of people in the hood with cars. Don't see.
I'm not saying they ain't got cars. I'm just saying, like in terms of like, we gonna pop the car. We gonna go here. Like,
and you know how many kids in my program go to Atlantic City and go to Wildwood. This is more than unique. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be everybody. It just has to be enough. To detract from the voice of the neighborhood. It doesn't have to be everybody. But if I go back to that block with 10 houses, if 3 of those houses have the wherewithal to leave and not worry about the service, that's three voices that's not going to say anything. Now, if you take those 3 voices don't say anything, you couple in maybe 2 more, like you said, who don't know what to do, well, that's 50%. Then you throw in 2 who don't know how to do it properly because they cussing and screaming and howling and threatening. So I'm saying, when you start taking those and adding up those categories with a group of people, that's voices that disappear, that matter.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking in the grand scheme of things. Like, we talk about how there's things that are lacking in our education system and community. So it's just like, I think that attributes to when we say that people don't know. I think even that's the thing where people are that's another intentional probably thing where it's like we remain uneducated, and then it's like you don't have that wherewithal or thought to be like, all right, I could change this in my community, even if you can go to AC or Wildwood. Like they just thinking they can pick up and go. You're not thinking like, let me make the most of what's already around me.
But that's the perfect example. If you look at Fairmont Park, and you look at the pigmentation of the people who use the free Fairmont Park, and it's free, and it's changing. But a couple years ago, the ethnicity of people who lived in close proximity to Fairmont Park weren't Caucasians, but yet still, who you see running around there, who you see, I'm not saying this in a bad way, but who you see taking advantage of it, running around the drive, or who you see on there with their kids and babies and don't think it wasn't us. We didn't take advantage of it. When you go down, how many people who my pet peeve who don't even know is an art museum steps called the Rocky Steps? And they've been living in Philadelphia their whole lives. They haven't even taken advantage of it. We talked about it before when they had the free pay as you will, and you can go free on Wednesdays. I didn't see a lot of us down there.
Nope. Definitely went down there, and they moved it to Friday. Even
I didn't see it. So I'm saying, if you look at, and that was the whole Parkway, Franklin Institute, when the police used to be there before they moved it, but all those things down there. So I'm thinking, I hear what you're saying, but that's what happens when you don't take advantage of things. You allow other people to come in and take advantage of it.
So I got a question for you, because you mentioned a reference kind of having schools be part of kind of building and fostering the community, but doesn't it also start at home? Like, don't we got to have it there?
But at what point do you say we know it's not happening at home and we put it in place somewhere? Or do we keep saying it should start at home?
The reason why I'm saying that is because even with the schools not even on the same page. I just seen a story today where this, not today, well, a couple of days ago, this woman's like suing the school because they started like indoctrinating her daughter and making her think that she was a boy. And it's like this idea of sense of community is different in so many places.
But it starts with one
saying let it be happening at the school. No, that's like
it doesn't
the
have
school's
to.
Not even a safe place.
It doesn't have to be every. You're not going to get anything to do it. So just if every individual school and you start there, and like I just mentioned, I know Congress is very good at establishing a community. Without making you indoctrinate you to something outside of what you chose. Because in the true sense of community, you accept people for who they are. I'm not forcing you to be a Christian. I'm not forcing you to be a Muslim. I'm not forcing you. That's not a true sense of community. It's a cult. So and it's not happening at home because a lot of parents don't know what community means. So what I meant with schools, in a perfect world, the district would adopt it. But to your point, everybody is going to be different. But if you had certain, like Pennell, I'm in Pennell now, and I see the difference versus some other school that I've been in. Whether it's Conwell, and I keep saying Conwell because Conwell is down in the heart of all that stuff, the opiate and all that crazy stuff going on, and they've established a real sense of community down there. Those kids feel safe in the school. When they're inside the school, it's almost like they don't even realize what's happening outside the school. So you can do it. But one, you got to have strong leadership. And whatever your sense of community is needs to be clearly defined. You should not be trying to convince somebody into in a sense of community. You allow people to discover who they are.
But I think that's the thing. It's like I'm not saying that it's impossible or improbable. It's just that maybe this idea of sense of community is so different for people right now that it's like hard to like think about. All right, how can we get on one accord and making sure like this is the type of community that we want to raise or have portrayed of it?
It's going to be different with every. That's what I said. You weren't here. We started talking about that. Community is different everywhere. There's work communities, there are home communities, there's school communities. Community is different, and I think the great thing about communities is it is going to be diverse. There's some is forced not to be diverse because that's just who lives around there. Mm-hmm. But in the real sense of community, it's not about Black, purple, orange, green, religion, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. We all live in the same proximity. We all work together. Mm-hmm. So we need to find some common cause, some common characteristics. We can function together so we can make sure that none of us is being taken advantage of, that none of us would be disenfranchised, that none of us are being abused or being, systematically attacked. That's a true sense of community. Yeah. And I think so it's going to be different. And just like no matter what you do, you're always going to get somebody that's going to corrupt it because that's just people involved. And when every human beings are involved, you often get somebody that's going to corrupt it.
That's important because I thought we were cooking too.
I know. Like, I mean, I think we still got to sound.
Yeah, but since I know we never fully got your answer, I asked that earlier in the show. When you think of community, like what comes to mind for you?
It's a great question.
And like if you have any examples, like I brought up, Mr. Dana and Andre and all, and like.
When I think of or hear community, I think I kind of referenced or hinted on this a little bit tonight. It's like so many different layers to it. Like, your community, the neighborhood that you live in, your neighbors. I do think about the community, like being part of the Black community, people that look like me, have a shared similar experience. And even kind of thinking just even beyond that, growing up, like I used to think I'm a basketball player. I was part of that community. I do writing stuff. I'm part of the arts and writing community. So it's like, I don't know, different factions in which I feel like I'm a part of multiple communities. But at the end of the day, I think the one thing, is that family is another community for me. Like that's probably the number one thing that we was just kind of raised on. Is just kind of looking out for your own, taking care of your own, like that. That's the first sense of community that, I feel like I believe in. but again, can still be part of other communities, and that be just as important to me too.
Do you think people are able to bring forth certain aspects of other communities to their respective communities?
What do you mean?
So, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Say, like, what other community? You said like basketball, right? Part of the basketball community. Like, are you able to take some aspects, like the leadership aspect of basketball or something like that, and can you implement that in other?
I think, I for real feel like that is probably one of the benefits of kind of being able to grow up the way we did, was just being part of so many different communities. It exposed us to so many different parts of life. Gave us different experiences, which, we feel comfortable in a lot of different situations and areas just based off of kind of the experiences and communities that we've been a part of. So I think that's a good idea for people to actually kind of take bits and pieces of different communities and try to take the best of it and apply it to yourself and how you can kind of improve upon that. And even kind of thinking about that and saying that, it makes me think about how sometimes we kind of self-segregate ourselves based off of what we think applies to one community versus what applies to another community.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good question to ask. It's like, what parts of other communities do you take and apply to your own? I think everybody should do that, but I don't think that's something that we all look into.
I don't think people realize how similar we could be, like community wise, because like you said, people get in their own way or different aspects like that, and I think that would be dope to bring certain aspects into our community that we could definitely use, like definitely a respect factor. That's one thing I noticed in like the Asian community.
Yeah, like the hierarchy.
Yeah, like there's always a respect thing. You're not going to see an Asian disrespect another Asian in public,
or their parents, or something like that. Yeah.
So in terms of that, I think that's something that we could, get back to.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Like I definitely feel like, and maybe kind of disassociating some of the labels with it, saying like, all right, this is a white thing, this is a Black thing. You can only do this if you're of this community or culture. I think that's something that we need to be mindful of. And again, to your point, like if we see something positive happen in another community, we should just be able to take that and apply that to our own. Like, Dan, what are your thoughts on that?
But the thing goes back to, you got to teach people what it means to be a part of a community. And we were talking about that before you got here. I think most people have no idea what that means to be a part of a community. Even though, we're talking about it tonight, but as I told you, when I'll ask in class, so I ask kids, high school kids, and I've asked, and some of the teachers have been in the room, do you feel like you're part of the school community? Well, What does that mean? What does that look like? So even when I say that, people still look at me like, okay, and teachers struggle to explain it. So if you're being led by somebody who has no idea what a sense of community is, how can you ever know what a sense of community is?
Right.
So that's the scary thing about it. And it's funny because Gary's on here. We talk about this, man. We've lost our sense, but now since we narrowed down the scope to us as African American people, we've lost our sense of community. We lost where you if somebody like my dad, if we knew somebody down the street didn't have food before we ate, take this pot down the street. Before we eat, take this. I had a guy who used to come to my house who we weren't best friends, but he knew when it was dinner time, so he would knock on my door because he knew my dad was going to invite him in to eat.
Birdman.
So he just knew, and he was a guy that was, his family didn't have much. He was outside. Devin made a comment about when Mr. Denny used to whistle, you knew it was time to come home.
Whistle, yeah.
When I was growing up with street lights, but dude never had to go in because nobody was looking out for him. So he always wanted you to stay late or do this, or he would come over and try to stay late during the school week because he didn't have anything else to do. So that was a sense of community. Now you got people we got siblings, man. You got, not looking out for siblings. This is crazy. Who don't even care anymore. So I think that has changed drastically, but it goes back to what's the definition. And I think holding people accountable. I know it's not happening at home. It should be happening at home, but schools should be held accountable. They ain't got a problem taking your tax dollars. They don't have a problem, doing some other stuff. So why not have a system set up where you're teaching kids about community? And one of the schools, and I'm putting out another shout out. There's a young lady who works who runs the program, and she wants to do a whole project on community, have the kids, kind of build houses and stuff, and design a car and talk about the sense of community. Her idea. So there's other people who still get it. Who you got to teach these kids what it's like to be a community. Like you shouldn't just take trash and knock it off the table and knock it on the floor and not care about it because you don't have to clean it up. I was talking to somebody this morning, and he works at a place and people bring dogs in, inside the building. And he got to come in and clean up crap because people allow their dogs to poop on the floor inside the building now, and they just leave. That's because you don't care. I don't care about the guy that got to clean this up. So that's because no sense of community. And these are the people who did that. I'm talking about people who have a little bit of cheddar. So they have a little bit of cheddar. Yeah. So because we, as a society, we don't think community anymore. Society is, what's in it for me? How can I, forget the another 9 houses on the block? I'm gonna get mine, and I don't care about everybody else's. So that's the issue we deal with. And it's been an age-old problem. It's just growing now because of selfishness that's taking place. Where people always, I'm gonna look out for me, look out for number one. Hey, I'm gonna do me. And people think it's cute. People think it's a great saying. Look, how many relationships are struggling because one person in a relationship, is I'm gonna do me. I crack a joke all the time, and maybe it's not funny, but people laugh when I say it. I talk to some people, and they're selfish. And they say, yeah, man, and I say, yeah, you and your spouse got one thing in common. And they say, what's that? Y'all both love me. Yeah, y'all both love you. You ain't mentioned doing it one time in this conversation. Yeah, it's about long as I get this, that's a problem. That's a problem when both y'all madly in love with you. That's an issue.
That's actually funny.
I laugh too, but they don't always think it's funny. But that's a problem, though. But now take that. How you raising kids the same way? So how do you teach a kid a sense of community when you don't get the sense of community in your house? When it's all about you, it's not about anything else that happens in this house.
Yeah, it honest opinion. I find it hard to see it kind of ever getting back to
here we go.
Where it was.
Man, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you a shirt that says naysayer. Naysayer.
I find it hard to believe.
Now,
your mama's boy.
We talked about specifically in the inner city, but do you think there's a real sense of community even like out here nowadays?
What do you mean?
Out here, like where?
Let's shout him. So the burbs.
Stop telling people.
Do I laugh? Do I laugh now or do I laugh later?
It's gone.
Whichever one you want to do.
Man, I think it's worse when you get outside the city because when you got the city, color becomes more of an issue. And I don't want to say at least like it's any less, but in the city they're not disliking you because you're black.
You all black.
Yeah, everybody black. So I mean, when you get out here, race becomes more of an issue. When you get out here, religion becomes more of an issue. There's just different stigmas and issues that you deal with when you move out into the suburb. When you get out here, finances come into the because like when we came out here in '98, everybody thought I hit the lottery. I hit the lottery. I was selling drugs. What you do was in the first two questions people asked: where you live and what you do. The assumption was that we lived in Linwood Gardens. It's like even running after school programs. There's times when I got to tell people who don't look like me, I got a master's degree. Because they talk to you like you just got a high school diploma. Because you ran after school program, like you don't understand. You're like, in other words, you're not smart enough to comprehend what I'm telling you. So again, I think if you go back to a sense of community, one of the key ingredients is you got to respect each other, man. I got to say, Chris, so what? You're Republican, but I'm going to respect you.
And I think that's the big thing. It's a lack of respect, a lack of.
But husbands and wives got to respect. But that's where it starts, though.
There's no willingness for people to actually listen and listen with empathy, and just be like, all right, I hear and understand. Even though I don't agree, that's okay.
We were talking about
happy medium.
We were talking on the call of the night with the guys, and I said it. There's sometimes, man, the topic was at some point you have to realize it was I have to be enough. You can't be everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was talking about, when you find somebody, you got to find a partner, accountability partner. But the problem with most of us is the minute you tell me something wrong, instead of me being empathetic, I got to top the story. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but check this out. I was married twice and it didn't work out. Yeah. So I got robbed 8 times. We have that mentality that I got to come with a better story and not just listen to what you're saying. And again, in a sense of community, I do care what you say.
Right.
I do care about what happens to you. And if it's about me, I don't care. Mm-hmm. So because it's all about me. And in relationships, I think that contributes exactly to relationships. Why you see what you see in a lot of relationships, because people don't stop to think. This is about us, not just me. If I'm not perfect, the relationship is never going to be perfect. Or if I think I'm perfect, the relationship is never going to be perfect. So I think you that's why it's and you see it, just disintegrating because, it's not being passed down in the house. It's not being passed down. My father made sure I understood the sense of community. I made sure you understood the sense of community. We're making sure McKinsey understands the sense of community. But if you're not doing it, the world is so selfish now, and Gary just talked about the world is so selfish now that it's growing, man. It's spreading like wildfire, and that's the popular thing. Yeah. That is the popular thing now. Even in relationships, if you're in I say it all the time, if you're in a relationship and it's me and I all the time, that's a problem. That's a problem. Or if somebody's constantly talking about what you do wrong, that's a problem.
I don't do nothing wrong ever.
But see, if you have a sense of community, and I say this all the time, because you have a sense of community, you look at how, for instance, and I'd say this all the time, if me and your mom not getting along, I always look at what could I have done differently.
Introspective.
Maybe I responded wrong. Maybe I didn't have to respond at all. Maybe I should have waited to respond. In the sense of community, you have that as opposed to now we mortal enemies. We just ain't getting along. I'm pointing everything you did wrong because nothing ever gets resolved like that. So you see kids growing up with that mentality. They don't have a sense of community. And I see the difference because I'm in these schools and you get that established in your after school program. They different kids. Yeah. They're laughing, they're joking, they're acting like kids, they're having a good time. They run up, they want to give you a hug. They like to be around you. So they hunger for it, but they just don't know what it is. And it's not. And then to your point, in some schools, it's not being taught because some schools, hey, we have labels, and labels is the thing that I think divide communities the most. And what I mean by labels is you're in the smart class, you're in the slow class. They don't call it that, but everybody knows how to label it. And so you're already forming cliques. You're already forming cliques because people in the slow class ain't hanging with people in the smart class. You're an athlete. So you're not hanging out with the nerds, so to speak. So it started. So yeah, but I'm saying that's how you homework.
But then it's these sub communities that will kind of get.
But that's how you destroy communities by having all those sub communities. Because if I take a community of 4,000 people, who are like-minded and working together, and then I divide into four groups of 1,000 people. If they're not like-minded, they don't have the same power. They don't have the same strength in their voice. And they're more susceptible for somebody coming in.
But that goes back to, I think, the original point that was said in the beginning of all this is that, like, it almost seems intentional.
It is not almost. It is intentional. I don't think it's almost.
Allegedly. Like,
I'm agreeing with you. But I told you.
But no, it's just because divide and conquer. You know, when you can't necessarily come together on anything, you're susceptible to be taken over by anything.
It's division and conquer, and it's also ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance in the way it's stupid. I know somebody's saying I'm calling them stupid. Ignorance in the fact that you're just uninformed. You don't know. And instead of trying to figure out what's going on, you just piling on with what you hear that sounds good. So when somebody gets on TV and say, you know, like, for instance, you know, people, perfect another example. Man, if I hit the lottery, what I'm going to do when I hit the lottery? I'm going to do this. Man, you don't give anybody anything. You don't. You know, you say, I'm going to do all this great stuff. And then you get it. And then you get it.
I'm going to give something to church.
Another sense of community.
My sister, my brother, and then they
when we used to live on Eastburn Avenue, and y'all young, you remember we used to live on Eastburn Avenue, and I used to say this to your mom all the time. There was an African American guy who owned a store in the corner, and that's where everybody went. So, about this year after we lived there, because we didn't stay there long, maybe 2 years, an Asian store opened up across the street. Everybody started going to the Asian store, but they were stealing from the black store. So the black guy had to hire a security guard. Had to raise his price a little bit. So they got mad about raising the price. But that's a sense of community. Yeah, but I'm just saying, that's how, if you got a sense of community, first of all, you ain't robbing from nobody.
Just rob them.
That happened at Walmart.
That's what this story
happens at Walmart.
No. What I'm saying is, but if you got a sense of community, then you don't drive our businesses out.
Right. Yeah.
You don't drive them out.
I think that's actually part of this story as well. It's just the lack of support that we have for each other.
But he's talking about, they did that in Chicago. That's why they're getting rid of a Walmart there.
What?
So it kept getting looted by a lot of people from the inner city that live there. Now they want to take everything out because they lost millions.
That's happening in a lot of places.
Yeah. Now they want to complain like, oh, you know, this is like affordable thing. They got great value. Yeah, it's like you got people literally on social media drinking things bought in the store.
Okay, but let's go back to the sense of community. I say this all the time. You got 80-year-old people that live in your community who don't drive, who need to go to the supermarket in the neighborhood. But you got some stupid 17, 18, 19, 20, wherever you're robbing the store to drive it out the neighborhood. That's a lack of community. When that happens so many times.
Nobody's going to talk about that.
But that happens so many times. And
what about the elderly people?
Yeah. And then the politicians who've been witnessing this whole thing will come in. Well, there's no business. No, you didn't protect the business in the neighborhood. I'm telling you to keep your store open. They robbing you, risking your life, taking stuff. And we were in a Wawa here on 611. And I told your mom, I said, that's how you know, it doesn't matter where you are. And this guy comes in. No, I see him outside. So, me, I'm a hood person. So I'm watching him out the corner of my eye. And he's looking at me. He's looking kind of funny. So I'm looking. I'm like, okay. I didn't come to Wawa to get into a fight. I came here to get some. So I got your mom, and love your mom to death, but she don't pay attention to stuff like that. So I said, go in the store. So he comes in the store and he looks around, walks all the way around the store. So I'm watching him. And
I'm out.
It's about of young sisters who work in the store. So he was dressed kind of bummy. So he wasn't gonna rob the joint, but I could tell he was up to no good. So he looks around, and I guess he surmises a bunch of young sisters working in the store. So he goes to get a cup, gets a juice, fill it up, and he's drinking it. So the girl's watching him. He's drinking it. Then he's walking around the store putting the stuff in his pocket. Taking his time. Oh, but check this out. So this lady's watching him. He goes to walk out. She holds the door for him. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I was a cop, I'm locking both y'all up.
I mean, but you're not supposed to. They tell you not to.
No, but you don't hold the door. The lady had nothing to do. But you watch him stealing, and you think that's cool. You hold the door for him. That is crazy.
She shouldn't have did that. But you're not supposed to chase.
No, they didn't know. It wasn't, and I applauded it because I could tell it was restrained.
I mean, baby,
the way he was going,
crazy.
Nah, she was smiling, laughing.
The way she upset a man like that.
No. The way he was going, and I could tell, and he was like teasing these girls because I could tell they wanted to say something, and they just, how you see him, and they were like, and most people like me in disbelief, So it's like, okay, you don't want to say something because you say something and you get the guy, the cops come, they get you.
But you know what's crazy? That's exactly why they built another Wild Wild right around the corner.
Yeah.
And
But now I know. But see, now I know why. But now I know why. At first I was like, yeah, wow, we're pretty close. But and the lady watching like we did, she opened the door for him like he did it great. Yo, you cheering this dude on. And I'm not I don't make a buck off of Wild Wild.
What was she supposed to do?
Just leave. You ain't gotta hold the door. Why you wouldn't encourage? The way Chris, you the look on her face, she knew what was going on. She watched him like we did. If I see you shopping, she was a person shopping like we were. She was a customer.
Yeah,
She was a customer.
I'm not gonna hold the door, but
yeah, I'm not saying interfere, but you holding the door like he did something great. It wasn't great. You may have a problem with Wild because you think it's a big corporation. Then don't shop.
But you know what's wild too is like people probably they look at it like that. They sticking it to the man.
But if they close, it impacts the people who can't drive, who only can get to that store. So that's what I'm saying. You going somewhere, and that's the part people don't. It's like when I was working in Chester, and I shared this story with somebody today. When I was working in Chester, the KFC, you couldn't go on the KFC during the day, and they had bulletproof glass for the drive-through. The doors was locked all day long. That's a terrible way to do business, and it's not fair for the community. But I'm saying, but the neighborhood drives that. So people who don't care about the community, that you get so busy doing this stuff, and that's what you got to do to have a successful business. They just got a supermarket a couple years ago.
Oh, it was a supermarket. I feel like not too far from here. Somebody like drove into it or something, and like so it's crazy.
Even the Enterprise,
they just destroyed
Broad Nitro. It has bulletproof glass. You got to get buzzed in. Yeah.
So the sense of community is why, and then it's no different when they loot. Like George Floyd, George Floyd gets killed, and they looting in downtown Philadelphia, breaking in business. Come on, man, that ain't no protest. Then you mad because they pass a curfew and say y'all can't be down here to 18 years. Or they show those stores in California where this group of young kids running in there dressed in all black and they just snatch as much as they can snatch, and nobody's saying a word. Everybody kind of, now one of them guard don't do it, but if somebody hurt one of them kids, everybody gonna be marching and protesting.
Yeah.
But you going there driving somebody out of business because you stealing stuff they paid for.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny how people pick and choose again what we kind of want to stand for.
But in the real sense of community, we look out for each other. I don't care what your sexual preference is. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. In the real sense of community, we look out for each other, man. And I'm not saying you put your life at risk. I'm not saying it. But in the real sense of community, if I look out my window and somebody's stealing your key, I'm calling the cops. I ain't gonna go back and close my window, roll over, and go to sleep.
Not my house.
Yeah,
people. That's how people are. Yeah. And I think it starts at home. I know you say it's not necessarily there, but kind of. I feel like that's what was fostered with us first was like that sense of identity when we started at home.
My father was huge on that. About. We be sitting
like whether that's our cousins, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, like just knowing the importance of that.
There was
having a support system.
We always had cousins or somebody living with us, man.
Like
if somebody needed a place to stay, they had a place to stay. So I just think, and I know it's time for us to start wrapping up, but I just know, things can't get better until we reestablish a sense of community. It can't, because as long as I keep people selfish, I got husband fighting against wife, church going against church, school going against school, we can't put this school around here because of this and because of this. We should be the only school they taking our dollars. Will be a better school. It will be a better school, and it just goes on and on until you get a sense of community. You're going to have what we have, because I don't care about anybody but myself. And that's what we're dealing with. And you see it in politics. When I'm listening to some of these politicians, some of the stuff they say, like, I don't want to. We talked about it last week. To me, American politics is a joke. Yeah. It's like a bunch of kindergartners in office right now, man.
It's like they're not getting done and just arguing and
because
every show. It's a show.
Instead of looking out for the greater good, which they were put in office to do, they're looking out for themselves and they few select friends.
But you want to actually kind of, to me, I just think they kind of highlight what the United States is actually like. They're a representation.
Oh, I agree.
They are a representation of what this country is like.
The sad part about it, I don't think they're a representation of the majority. I think they're a representation of the majority of people who have power, who have resources.
The decision makers.
I think, and even the people like a step below the decision makers. maker, the people who put these decision makers in place, who like when Trump says he's for small business and they think they got a 7-Eleven, he talking about them. He ain't talking about you, small business. His small business billions of dollars. They think they fit into that category. So therefore, forget everybody else. He looking out for me.
Yeah.
My business booming. Forget that everybody around me is going bankrupt and stuff is crashing. So that's the issue. Whenever you get out of the sense of community and you get to selflessness versus selfishness, and people choose selfishness
every time.
So the problem with it is how they can get better. I'm not saying what you're saying, but how do you begin to change things if we keep doing the Three Stooges thing, saying it should happen at home, it should happen at school? No, schools have to do a better job because we know it's not happening.
Everybody has to play their part.
Yeah, but you can't. If you can get the schools to do it, you can change it separate at home because generations will start to be able to change it. You can't expect somebody who doesn't know how to do something to wake up one day and now know how to do it.
It's funny talking about the schools because it's like that's a whole other conversation there.
Oh, it is, and I'm in it. But what I'm saying is, you got to start. My philosophy is this. My philosophy is when I'm doing my parenting, mentoring, whatever, and I'll start with parenting. If I can help this person change their concept to be a better father or be a better parent, now they can teach their kids, so it becomes generational. I don't expect them to go back and just lay hands on their friends and all their friends, but you start generation mentoring. If I can help break the cycle of a family of guys who always went to jail or who don't value education, I can get one of these kids, hopefully or preferably when they grow up, they'll marry somebody with the same mindset. It's generational. Mm-hmm. That's the only, you're not going to change houses now by going to all these houses because some of them don't want to hear it.
Exactly.
So, but if you start with kids, you empower kids, they can start to change. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it can be a slow process. So now when I grow up, I can change my household. I can change, my immediate surroundings. I can start to hang out with people who are like-minded. So now it's not just me, it's people who think like me.
That's what's probably where, again, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. Education, it's almost intentional that they don't want people to be educated because you can critically think and you can, form ideas, have conversations, and come together as a community.
You can think for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, the problem, again, it's funny because they used to say this all the time back, I guess, around the 80s and 90s. They used to say, the most dangerous black man is an educated black man. The other side of the thing was when you hide stuff from a black man, hide it in the book. But that's still, they don't say those things, but that's still relevant today. And in your line of work, you do. When people think you dumb, they love you to death.
Yeah.
But the minute you show you can hang or you can, and I gotta say it, black on black crime and that in corporate America is just as bad.
Black on black crime in corporate America. Because
it ain't a physical crime, but it's just as bad.
Yeah.
That we don't have a sense of community. We like crabs in the barrel, or we think he is. So I think but it has to start somewhere, man. And I think it starts if you start working with kids in school, man. You're not gonna get all of them, but you can become generational.
Yeah.
And sometimes kids do persuade their parents into doing something different. It's like when I do Toy Store. I don't do Toy Store in the cool trial because I expect somebody to drive in and give me, allocates or give me awards. I do it because, hey, I'm hoping I can teach people to give back to the community. I'm hoping people can say, you know what, he don't even live around here no more, but he comes back every year and he does this. Don't charge anybody, and hopefully they pay it forward. And not so they can't say everybody's selfish, everybody looks out for them. No, everybody doesn't. The same thing I do Thanksgiving baskets. They can't say nobody gives, or nobody does anything for free because we do. We do. Yeah. The same reason why I got you guys out there when you were young, had you done things so you could see that.
Yeah. We need more good people being and doing loud things.
Yeah. But you also got to do it and not do it for attention.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
And you also got to do it. And this is my last point.
We need to give it attention now again because I think that's what deters people sometimes.
Yeah, you can give
it. It needs to be authentic though, because there are some people who just do it for show.
Yeah, look what I'm doing. Right. But I also think you got to be purposeful by taking somebody along on a ride with you. Mm-hmm. You got to be purposeful by duplicating yourself, man.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah.
So anyway, we at the point now. We've been on here an hour. I know we started a little late. So.
Yeah, another great episode above average black man. I feel like our topics have just been getting better and better each week. It was good to be here with you guys and be able to chat it up. Looking forward to next week's topic.
Like, follow, subscribe, share, comments. Interact with us.
We'll get you a T-shirt that says.
That's
about to really
just a T-shirt that say that.
Repping Bloomberg today.
Yeah, that's funny. It came with the Nashville piece set.
Yeah, I know, man. See, see now when I wear my Rochester stuff, you get upset. I break up my Lakers
It's just
stuff.
the colors.
Welcome to another episode as we close down on Above Average Black Men. My brother Derek, Gary, man, appreciate you guys and everybody for listening. Say it one more time.
Like, follow, subscribe, share, comment.
See you guys next week. Hey, if you want to be a guest, we're looking for guests. Hit us up.